This is Ayesha Siddiqa in London with neighbors talking on Naya TV. This is a program which discusses issues in South Asia and has neighbors talking on issues which are of importance, mutual interest and individual interest. Today, I have Praveen Swami with me. He's a very renowned Indian journalist and national security editor at The Print. Welcome, Praveen.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be with you today.
Praveen, you know what's happening in Pakistan, and you know there is these catastrophic floods. There's such phenomenal devastation, unprecedented, I would say. So, and I'm sure that in India, people cannot just close their eyes and uh, ignore this development. So, how do you think the government in India and people in India are looking at it?
Well, I think there's a great deal of sympathy for Pakistan at this moment of great hardship. Floods and natural disasters have been a part of India's landscape as they have of Pakistan for many generations. It's interesting to me that despite the often adversarial political relationship, many of the clouds over the people to people relationship as well. Prime Minister Modi's used the opportunity to reach out and voice some sympathy. I simply think that's because it is understood that this is a tremendous moment of difficulty and hardship, and that India needs to help in any way it can at a time like this.
So this expression of sympathy, I mean, do you see that it's going to go beyond, just uh, a few words? I mean, is there going to be a tangible uh, impact?
Well, in an ideal world, or in a rational world, it should. It's absurd for a situation where there is abundant food stocks, abundant fresh food supplies, abundant resources of things like bank blankets and construction materials just across the border from Pakistan, which are not rolling west to be in aid. But that is the absurdity and the tragedy of the India-Pakistan relationship. I think India would be more than willing to open up that border and to send whatever aid is possible across it.
And just to remind you, I mean, if you remember that under Dr. Manmohan Singh, India did provide aid to Pakistan. The last time I think it was 2010, 2010, 2011.
But yes, and but we've also seen absurd situations in the past where you'll recall during the Great Kashmir earthquake, where aid had got trapped in some very ugly tutu meme, uh, which you would not expect mature or sensible countries to engage in. So there's a history of cooperation. There's also this unfortunate history of very sensible things getting stuck because of the wider state of the political relationship. But I honestly hope people will put aside whatever the problems in the relationship may be, and simply open that border for whatever aid supply can go across right now, because ordinary people are in desperate need. And really, this should not be a matter for politics of any kind. I mean, our disagreements over Kashmir can be resolved in due course. Some poor farmers' needs today are probably a lot more intense.
No, certainly. And I mean, I would say that yes, Prime Minister Modi, his sympathy, words of sympathy are really welcome. But will he be able to get India behind him, his own government behind him, to provide aid to Pakistan, or even to start trade? Does he have that support?
Well, I mean, this aid thing is I think something that the Prime Minister has the political heft and authority to do, irrespective of what hawks in his party may or may not think. The Prime Minister Shoni has the authority to make decisions, uh, that fly in the face of what the fringes of his own party might or might not think, one way or the other. So that is not the problem here. Uh, the problem is going to be whether Pakistan wants to accept that aid, and whether uh, Pakistan wants to open up for trade. We've seen some contradictory statements from the finance minister and the prime minister. And earlier we had that very odd episode in Prime Minister Imran Singh Khan's tenure, where he,
Yeah.
I forget the phrase, rejected it with one hand and accepted it with the other,
Yeah.
or vice versa. So Pakistan is going to have to make a decision around this. Um, I think on this side, the willingness to start providing aid would be, more than in place. One of the interesting things, actually, I think, trade finds its own way. And in August, we had these fascinating figures which showed that, despite the trade ban on the border, India-Pakistan trade was actually going up, with commodities like pharmaceuticals and sugar had, if I remember correctly off the top of my head, had gone up very significantly in the 3 months preceding August. So some of that is happening anyway. Some of that is happening through third countries in the Middle East. It's I really think it's silly not to make this decision, and policymakers ought just take this call and get on with it, because the only people who are hurt by this lack of trade are ordinary people who end up paying higher prices for things.
and
Uh,
and 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 the I would say the only beneficiaries of Pakistan India holding back are the Middle Eastern countries, through
yes, who
which.
manage to charge a commission. And why shouldn't they? If your neighbors or your slightly distant neighbors are foolish, then other people will profit from it. So I mean, I think, unfortunately, this whole issue has become uh, you know mired down in various other considerations. You had the long debate over MFN status for India, various other things. But really, there's no strategic case for this. It's not like India's behavior on Kashmir or its strategic calculus on Kashmir is going to be changed by Pakistani imports of tomatoes or Indian imports of cement. Uh, these things ought go on. Let's remember the Soviet Union and the United States traded at various points and in various ways right through the Cold War in various kinds of commodities. Even now, in the middle of the Ukraine war, there is a trade relationship, even though there is a direct confrontation. And for us to be punishing our people with high prices is, to my mind, completely illogical and absurd.
But since you are the national security editor at the print, if you look at a crystal ball, how do you see, will Pakistan kind of allow for trade with India? I mean, forget about, I mean, aid is one issue. The other is trade. I mean, how is it being perceived in India? I mean, that's an important question. Will it happen? From what I have heard, that there might actually be some backdoor, back channel conversations on trade already happening. So, what do you think is stopping Pakistan from doing trade? And how will it happen? What will be the mood in India?
I think in India there would be, at the policy level, a great deal of positivity about a resumed trade relationship, because one of the things Indian diplomacy has always pushed for is these small incremental steps towards normalization. So we had the ceasefire on the line of control being resumed. Indian diplomats would typically say, do trade next, do something else next, and then we can move towards the more complex issues. Having said that, trade has been one of those issues that's always been hostage to the state of the political relationship. And over time, that's meant that India Pakistan trade is actually very, very small for business people in either countries. And it makes sense. I mean, if I'm a business person, why on earth would I want to make significant investments in trade or in business across a border when I don't know what's going to happen 3 months from now or 6 months from now? So, apart from the most sort of small, petty trade, nothing has moved forward. And it's sad. You remember the optimistic years under Manmohan Singh when people had actually started buying land close to Vaga on both sides, thinking there is going to be this sort of great burst of trade, and then eventually there will be land needed for warehouses and for other things. That didn't happen. And I think that's made the business community on both sides scared. And that in turn has meant that the volumes are very, very small. Now, the potential's there, um, uh, but really a few $1 million that we currently trade is nothing for either country.
I think
Um,
about $200 million,
yes,
Pakistan
and
India
that's a
trade.
tiny amount of money. It doesn't make any difference, but the potential is enormous. And but that potential can only grow if governments create an enabling climate and reassure businesses that look, we're not going to change course in 3 months because there was some trouble on the line of control, or because we didn't like something that happened in Kashmir, or a bomb went off somewhere. There'll have to be some sustained push and effort behind this. And on that, I'm pessimistic because I think the fundamental problem right now is that politicians, the political leadership in both India and Pakistan, are very election driven. They just don't see a political payoff from peacemaking. It's far easier to drum up a few votes from hawkish behavior than from defending long term national interests. And that's unfortunately where we are. I know Prime Minister Narendra Modi did try very hard to reach out to then Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. There was some genuine push there and willingness to make some kinds of things happen, I think, on both sides. But they're painfully aware of what happened next, and painfully aware there's no political payoff. So I think this is an opportunity for this, some good things to happen. I think the case for those things happening at the strategic level is compelling for both countries. Unfortunately, there's no political push for it. There is no coalition or force in either country's political spectrum that can turn to leaders and say, hey, grow up, make this happen.
I'm sure you're conscious that on Pakistan side, uh, the very important institution, the Pakistan Army, its chief, the Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa, is interested in trade. So one hears. And Shahbaz Sharif, Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif, is also, and his PMLN is keen to build relations. So, what do you think is stopping Pakistan? What does Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif mean when he says there are irritants which don't allow Pakistan to do trade? Will it happen? I mean, I'm asking you to look into your crystal ball.
So I can only speculate. I mean, there's clearly some push and pull at the policy level in Pakistan because you have, as you say, some pro trade sounds periodically emerge. And then those pro trade noises being pushed back against or hit back against by other elements in the ruling political military establishment. One possibility is maybe there are some divisions within the army about this, and that not everyone sees eye to eye with General Bajwa. The other may be that the military itself may expect India to make some concessions or first steps on Kashmir before it allows normalization of the relationship. We also know General Bajwa has been telling European interlocutors that look, I feel I've done a lot on the line of control. I feel I've done a lot to rein in jihadi groups like the Lashkar-e-Taiba, but I don't feel the Indians are willing to make those 2 steps forward and give something on Kashmir, which is not wrong about. Um, I guess the Indian response to that would be, well, yes, there's been action against the jihadi groups. Yes, the line of control is quieter, but there is still some amount of infiltration that we are concerned about. We are not sure how irreversible the measures General Bajwa has taken actually are, because a lot of the infrastructure and capacity of groups like the Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed is still there. To my mind, though, we can have this debate for the next many years, decades, sadly, maybe even centuries. But trading is not going to change this one way or the other. All trade will do is provide a few badly needed dollars to our unfortunately poor and in need populations, particularly in the border states. And so there's a compelling case to open it up. A few $1 million of trade will not make Pakistan dependent on India or India dependent on Pakistan. It will not cripple either country. We should really be a little mature about this, I think, and move forward. And by the way, I think there are other things that we should be also be moving forward on, which we can do irrespective of the state of the relationship.
And there are things that we need to do. I mean, climate change is staring at us in our faces, and this is not something that a single country can do on its own. We
Yeah,
need cooperation.
you're from South Punjab, Aisha, and I spend a lot of time, a lot of my friends and whatever from the Indian side of Punjab, and we both know to the extent to which aquifers have been depleted because of excessive water use by farmers, the way in which changing summer temperatures and winter temperatures have affected harvests. So we'll need resilience and the ability to move commodities to each other's populations, simply because we, by geography, have been placed next door to each other. I think another fascinating case is the Indus Waters Treaty. So we know that flow in all the Himalayan rivers has begun to change a lot, partly because of receding glaciers, unpredictable rainfall patterns. And when the Indus Water Treaty was written, it assumed a stability of flow in these rivers that probably does not exist anymore and certainly is not going to exist in the future. So, are there mechanisms that we can think of to collaboratively exploit the waters of these river systems so that there is more water available for irrigation, more water available for power? Can India and Pakistan discuss collaboratively swaps of, say, power for India and water for Pakistan? Now, I agree some of this needs a level of strategic trust that we probably don't have. But
It also requires talking to each other, right?
exactly. So the strategic trust in part comes from the conversation. And my case would be you can't afford to not have these conversations because, say, if you agree to build bigger dams in the inner Himalayas and share their resources, if you start these projects today, maybe they will be built 20, 30, 40 years from now. But 20, 30, 40 years from now, we'll be in the midst of a climate crisis. We can't decide when the crisis is full blown that suddenly we will build a dam there. Similarly, there's probably room for conversations on sharing solar power. So solar power is or wind power are great resources, but the bigger area you spread them out over, the less your risks are from cloudy days or from windless days. So power purchase agreements that span across borders for some desert regions might be a very sensible idea. I mean, I'm thinking off the top of my head here. I'm very far from an expert on power or hydrology or, for that matter, business. But I think, we have, these so many of these track two conversations where you have people from military backgrounds or intelligence backgrounds or diplomacy sit together across the table. probably there is time for a lot more conversations involving sectors of civil society on both sides who deal with these kinds of issues, because they're the ones who know that, you know, what can be done and the urgency of getting those things done.
I was reading somewhere yesterday, somebody pointing out that for climate crisis, etc., people whose CV says IR expert, South Asia expert, should stay away from conversation and let experts do it. There's,
Yeah.
perhaps there's a secret there, but you know, uh, so will the but security in IR is so tied to everything that we do in South Asia, especially amongst Pakistan and India. So do you think the security establishment in India will be able to kind of look away from their concern of terrorism? I mean, the groups are there. I mean, I was reading your article in the print yesterday, in which you pointed out that Lashkar-e-Taiba is perhaps still in Pakistan providing aid to flood affectees. Um, so that kind of coverage in media perhaps is going to distract the security establishment in India and say, well, because these guys are there, so we can't help, so we can't have more conversations.
Well, I on the media point, I mean, I don't think there's anything that goes on either side of the border that the spooks of both countries don't know about long before it ends up in the media. And for a while now, these concerns about the Lashkar and the Jaish have been there in India. They've been showing up in United Nations Security Council reports on the situation in Afghanistan, which have flagged the operation of these two organizations there. So the skepticism. See, I don't think you can insulate the wider relationship from security issues simply because it becomes politically important. If a 26/11 happens, or if there is some horrific terrorist attack, then obviously whoever the ruling government is going to face a lot of heat to sever its relations with the other side. And even if the terrorism is not of strategic import, then that pressure is there. But the fact of the matter is that for quite some years now, nothing catastrophic in terrorism terms has happened. The situation, even in Jammu and Kashmir, despite the revocation of Kashmir's constitutional special status, has not become bad. It's, many people predicted a surge in terrorist attacks and a revival of the jihadi movement. Nothing like that has happened. And probably, that has something to do with the actions General Bajwa and the Pakistan army has taken to keep a lid on jihadi activities or these groups in Pakistan. And more important, sometimes I think the perfect can be the enemy of the bad. So this Indian desire saying that, we want to be sure nothing is going to happen in the future, we are uncertain before moving forward currently, can be a bit self-defeating. If I may, I think one of the problems in both countries is ever since the 90s, there's been no clarity on what the end state they desire with the other country is. What practically is Pakistan's objective in its relationship with India, and saying that, we want India to be do what we think should happen in Kashmir is silly. Similarly, all this stuff about, we want a 100% guarantee there will never be terrorism coming from Pakistan is just unrealistic. So you need focus on what end state you desire. And we haven't had that. If you ask, I think, any Pakistani politician or any Indian politician to spell out in one sentence, what relationship do you want? You'll not get a very clear answer.
So Praveen, just finally, if I could kind of interrupt your thoughts right there. If in one action that you think both Pakistan and India should take to encourage trade, because trade for me is more long term than aid, what should that one step be?
Open the border and allow trading in essential commodities like pharmaceuticals and sugar to take place without any restrictions on both sides. Give our farmers a market, give our small industries a market, and let the businessmen find a way. Just assure them that government will not get in the way. Even if there is a bomb blast, or even if there is no some incident in Kashmir which creates problems, we'll push forward with this. Trust me, the business community will find its own way to overcome all the other obstacles and build a sound foundation. Do that, and then we can move on to stage 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 later on. But let this begin. And to my view, the floods are a fantastic time for this to begin today, because the needs of those people cannot wait for tomorrow for governments to be talking about.
Mr. Praveen Swami, National Security Editor at The Print, thank you so much for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, viewers, listeners, I think this is the time, as Mr. Swami said, floods happening in Pakistan. It's devastating, it's a tragedy, but it also offers an opportunity, certainly for the two nations, India and Pakistan, to start trade. This is a very important tool. This is about our future. Thank you so much. See you
Thank
next
you.
Sunday.